Before we start the video, just a quick heads up. This is part 8 in a series I'm doing covering the Super Monkey Ball franchise. Although today's game marks the beginning of a new generation, you may want to see the other chapters first, since I'll be making a lot of comparisons. With that being said though, hey there, I'm Kardino, and welcome back to Fallout, a Super Monkey Ball retrospective. Imagine for a moment that it's the year 2006. The Nintendo Wii is just around the corner, and the hype has reached a fever pitch. Despite the skeptics, people can't wait to get their hands on launch titles like Wii Sports and Twilight Princess. With Nintendo's new controller, the Wii Remote, players are getting ready for the next revolution in game design. It not only has conventional buttons, even having an attachable stick called a nunchuck, but it adds motion controls. Want to play a round of tennis? Just swing the controller. Wielding a sword? Swing the controller. This is gonna be the next big thing. But while most people are focused on the heavy hitters, Monkey Ball fans are waiting for the first all-new entry since SMB2, which released 4 years earlier. I mean, yeah, there was Adventure, but even back then, people just kinda glossed over that one. And not only does this entry promise fresh content, but an even fresher control scheme. Think about it. The entire gimmick of Monkey Ball is that you're tilting the stage with the analog stick. Asterisks included for the pedants. But analog sticks can only be so precise. Why not make the entire controller the analog stick instead? That's right, tilting the world is as easy as pointing your Wiimote, opening the door for even greater precision and stage design. But that wasn't the only change. This game also featured new characters and some added new mechanics, a jump button, and several boss fights. Maybe a few raise their eyebrows, but hey, it got the green light from Nagoshi himself, and he would know better than anyone what makes Monkey Ball tick. Not to mention the sheerly absurd number of minigames included. Yes, fans couldn't wait till Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz released alongside the Wii in November that year. Now, I know some of you just had a gag reflex just now, probably at the term motion controls. But remember, this was a Wii launch title. The image of smashing your Wiimote into a TV was not yet ingrained into the minds of the gaming community. In fact, when the game was demoed at E3, pretty much everyone had a positive impression. But when the game actually came out, reviews were somewhat polarized. Many outlets gave it high scores, saying it pushed the series forward, while some said otherwise. And when fans finally got their hands on the game, the discourse wasn't much better. In fact, this is the first game where videos from the time actually showed what people thought, which is pretty funny when you realize that even IGN staff disagreed on whether they thought the game was good or not.
Still, the main mode is a lot of fun, and actually it's enhanced by the Wii Remote.
Monkey Ball is crap,
but
it's really horrible.
Overall, it's a great game, which is why we gave it an 8.4 and an Editor's Choice Award.
It's gotten good reviews from everybody. I mean, it hasn't gotten a bad review that I've seen, and it's really bad. The minigames are almost unplayable.
EGM gave it bad reviews.
So, without further ado, welcome everyone to the revision era of Monkey Ball. Let's dig into— oh my gosh, what is that box art? Well, you know what they say, never judge a book by its cover. Good thing this isn't a book, so I'm free to start judging. Enough dawdling though, let's dig into Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz.
Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz!
So, as usual, we'll look at the presentation first. Well, there's one thing this game's missing right off the bat. An intro cutscene. Yeah, remember how SMB 1 and 2 had cute movies to get you hyped? Well, the only thing we get now is this weird loading screen. This is actually the only Wii game I know of that has to load before the safety screen, so that's interesting if nothing else. But heading into the menu, the D-pad doesn't work? Yeah, remember, this is an early Wii game, so what you have to do? Tilt the controller. I'm not a fan of this. I get they were excited about the Wiimote, but when they arbitrarily lock you out from using a control scheme that worked perfectly fine in the earlier games, it just feels like they're fixing what isn't broken. And it's honestly pretty annoying. Plus, putting everything on a single wheel means you can't see all your options at once, and in general, it's just slower to get around. It reminds me of SMB2's name entry screen, which wasn't great to begin with. It especially stings a little when you look at the E3 demo and see that it actually had a list format. So that means they really did fix what wasn't broken. That being said, I think the overall aesthetic, while being different from the originals, is perfectly fine, and I like how everything has its own icon, like in 2. That seems like a strange thing to compliment, but just remember, count your blessings. Now, one more thing to complain about before getting into some more positive stuff. I do not like these new character designs at all. To be fair, I get what they were going for, something like Touch and Roll's chibi style, but the difference here is that they go above and beyond to make them seem like little kids. Even beyond that, I'm not a fan of this 3D chibi look. I think their eyes are the most disturbing, actually. They really do look lifeless. But now that I'm done with that rant, let's springboard into something I do like. The addition of the new character. Yan Yan is such a fun addition to the gang, and her personality adds a fun new element. She's a lemur with martial arts skills and in general acts the most energetic. She even has an implied romantic rivalry with Mimi toward Ai. Fun stuff. Oh, and I guess Doctor's a new character too. I'll be honest though, he's probably my least favorite of the gang. He's this old amnesiac who's apparently really smart, but kinda stands out apart from everyone else. I don't know, I've never really been a fan of punchlines that amount to derpy old man, which kinda seems like his entire shtick. Even if you don't like the character models though, most of the other stuff looks pretty nice. In fact, Sega had to clarify that the game wasn't cel-shaded. Everything is so bright and vibrant, it really does pull off the fake HD look rather well. The text and UI is clean, and I appreciate how some sound effects play from the Wiimote itself. Sure, some screens definitely look better than others, but the bad ones are the exception more than the rule. Actually, you know what? Here's something I do like about the characters. Their animations. This is a very small detail, but the character select screen is the same as in 2. It's a nice touch. And in the main game, they're always so energetic, especially Yan Yan. Another thing I appreciate is the new music. I mentioned before how SMB2 had a banger soundtrack, but this one gives it a serious run for its money. Instead of going for the Y2K feel, it has a much bigger emphasis on rock. So whether you're trekking through the jungle or taking down a boss, you're jamming out a lot of the time. Although, something funny I did notice is how for a lot of the original tracks here, the first 30 seconds are very whatever, and it's only after that, you know, when you've tuned out the music, that it seriously picks up. Like the title screen music, it's actually a pretty good song, but the beginning is easily the worst part, and the screen cuts away before it can get good. So, that's a shame. But, hold on a minute, because I said this is how most of the original music was. That's right, folks, we've got a partially reused soundtrack. Or more accurately, it's newly mixed versions of old stuff from across the series, primarily Touch and Roll. Now, you may think I'd count that against Banana Blitz, but I actually think it's a plus. Remember what I said then? I gotta say though, the DS sound card does not do these compositions justice. They went for this almost goofy cartoon style to compensate, but it ranges from pretty good to pretty meh. Well, now that they're on the Wii, they have their chance to shine, and boy do they ever. These are some banger tunes. Sure, one or two of them might sound better with the old arrangements, but for the most part, it's a straight upgrade. Seriously, SMB2 had some real standout tracks, but this hits a completely different vibe. And some of them just go way harder than they need to. Fun fact, the company hired to make this soundtrack is actually the same group who made a bunch of tracks for Smash Bros. Ultimate. Who knows, maybe I'm giving the soundtrack too much of a free ride, but I love rock, so what can I say? Now, to close out this presentation discussion, let's talk about the new narrator. In some circumstances, I think he does fine. Nothing special, but serviceable. But most of the time, I am not a fan of his delivery. It feels almost patronizing, like he's speaking to little kids, which I suppose is in line with the rest of the presentation, but still, Brian Matt's performance was better. Mostly because he sounded crazy and almost sarcastic. When he gave that,
"Ready? Go!"
it almost had an undertone of, "Prepare to die!" In other words, it felt like there was character and excitement there, not this milquetoast performance. I don't know whether that's just the person they hired or they deliberately wanted it to sound like that, probably a mix of the two, but I do wish they had just had Brian Matt come in for another round. But anyway, I've gone on long enough about the presentation, so let's get on with the gameplay. Now, starting the game, we come to a very interesting decision by the devs. There's no challenge mode in this game. Instead, we've taken touch and roll's approach by having 8 different worlds, with 2 more unlockable ones. This time though, they did include a story, sorta. Unfortunately, it's pretty much just a cutscene at the start and one at the end. Now, here's the thing. I excused touch and roll's world approach because it was on a handheld. And honestly, I wasn't really expecting much of a story anyway on the DS, so I didn't even think twice about its lack of one. Banana Blitz doesn't get that excuse though, because this is a full-fledged sequel to SMB2 and Deluxe. So it either needed a traditional challenge mode or at least some sort of story to drive the player along, preferably both. And as a franchise built with an arcade design, breaking up the levels like this removes much of the skill required by those levels, and even results in the ways the levels are structured themselves, especially compared to the old game's advanced and expert modes. Remember, because you had to endure so many levels, you needed to take as many opportunities as you could to collect bananas. So the developers could make alternate paths and warp goals for a nice risk-reward situation. But when you've got 10 levels at a time, the only thing that really motivates you from getting a game over is setting a high score. At first, anyway. That being said, something I do hear about this game is that it's too easy. Tons of guardrails, especially at first, and wider stages overall, don't make for much of a challenge. But I would actually disagree. I think these stages more or less follow a similar difficulty curve to the original, albeit adjusting for motion controls. And don't worry, we'll get to that too. All in good time. World 1, Monkey Island, is pretty much like Beginner. It mostly acts as a tutorial. Even the boss is just a bird where you have to jump on its head. World 2, Jungle Jumble, World 3, Smooth Sherbet, and World 4, Detritus Desert are like the advanced level. Nothing crazy, but they do require some brain power. But after that, it's on to Pirates Ocean, World 5. Here is where the difficulty bumps up a notch. We're starting to get into early expert territory here. More precise jumps, thinner precarious platforms, and many less guardrails. And this continues through World 6, Cobalt Caverns, World 7, Volcanic Pools, and World 8, Space Case. And the 2 secret worlds? Expert Extra at the very least, if not Master. So why were people dissatisfied here? It follows a standard difficulty curve and has plenty of interesting environments. Isn't that what people wanted? Well, here's the thing. If this was just a story mode alongside a challenge mode, people probably wouldn't mind. But nope, this is the only main mode in the entire game. So it's kind of like if SMB2 only had its story mode and didn't have the cutscenes in between worlds. Oh, and lives have once again been made pretty easy. This time around you start with 3 and it takes 20 bananas to get another one. Better than touch and roll, but lives are still way too plentiful. Now, you may recall that I suggested 20 for touch and roll, but remember, that was a handheld with a D-pad no less. So I still stand by my suggestion. Not so much for the Wii. Especially with continues being infinite now, I'd say 50 would be a better number. But these are not the only things wrong here, and the issues go much deeper. so I think we'd better take this one aspect at a time. First of all, I think we should address a glaring issue here: the motion controls. Now, I've heard people say that these don't work at all, and let's be fair here, that's not really true, at least in my experience. They're somewhat responsive for the most part, you can somewhat get used to them. However, these are no match for the classic analog stick. As we've already established, what made it great was that you didn't have to think which direction you were going, especially with the notches in the GameCube controller. And since you could feel the stick's resistance, you knew immediately how fast you would go too. In other words, it was simplistic but intuitive. Now, let's look at the Wiimote. At first it seems just as simple: tilt and roll. In fact, Sega even suggested that this would add even greater precision to your movement. And here is where the whole control scheme kinda falls apart. While it's perfectly serviceable for making general motions, the Wiimote's accelerometer wasn't really built with many micro adjustments in mind. Not to say it couldn't make them, but think of most successful Wii titles, particularly those before Motion Plus was added. All of them required simple flicks or jabs, and many people criticized them for this when the initial illusion of golfing wore off. But here, we see what happens when you do require too precise movement. It somewhat works, but we already had a control stick for this. And that's not even factoring in the element of human error, like having to keep the remote in a very specific position to not move. And again, even factoring out the human error, why go through all this effort when the control stick worked perfectly fine? Like with the menu itself, it's just fixing what isn't broken. Maybe you could waive all of this, considering it was an experimental launch title and all, but you know what? I suspect Sega knew all of this too, because this game not only changed the game structure, but the designs of the stages themselves. In the originals, the designs were short and sweet. There was never a stage that couldn't be beaten in under a minute, and many in SMB1 even had 30-second time limits. In fact, one of the main issues people had with Exam C was that it was so abnormally long and grueling, but still kept that 60-second time limit. But in general, most stages could be described as a starting platform, a single challenge, then the goal. I'd like to coin these types of stages the puzzle box design, and SMB2 followed in these same footsteps. But in Banana Blitz, they take what I would call the obstacle course approach. Now, instead of being tight and compact, they're much more lengthy and feature plenty of areas to recover in between obstacles. And there are a lot of stages which feature up to 2 whole minutes. And sure, some of the classic stages were like this. I mean, I just mentioned Exam C, but they were mixed in with the others. Banana Blitz makes them the focus. This, I think, is probably because they had to compensate for the Wiimote. But what it means is that they're much more watered down and aren't as memorable. They also tone down the difficulty quite a bit for balance. I mean, let's be real. If they had 1 and 2's difficulty with motion controls, it would be nothing short of a nightmare. But that's not what most fans value in a Monkey Ball game. We like challenge. We like pushing ourselves. But with this new control scheme, they couldn't make it much harder. Remember how I said that the game featured a similar difficulty curve to the other games? Well, here's the caveat. The reason it gets harder is mostly for the wrong reasons. Not only do the controls feel less accurate, but the engine itself feels pretty different too. Where in the original you felt like you were controlling a weighted marble, here it's like you're controlling an empty plastic ball. You're much more bouncy and seemingly take a lot longer to slow down. So often when you die, while I wouldn't say it feels cheap, it doesn't always feel like you're at complete fault either. And needless to say, it leads to an overall worse experience. So yeah, the difficulty here, a bit too artificial for my liking. If this were controllable with even the nunchuck, it would be way easier than its older siblings. Heck, it even had the 8 notches from the GameCube controller. But of course, you have to use motion controls, because otherwise it would completely throw off the balance of the game. But that just begs a question, If your new control scheme handicaps a player to the point where you have to tailor the game around it, what does that say about the actual proposition of the control itself? This is why I do not believe Sega when they claim that they found motion controls to be a more precise movement method. Because if they did, they wouldn't have to sacrifice so much of what made Monkey Ball great. At the end of the day, it was all marketing, novelty, and hot air. Well, okay, maybe the controls weren't the best. But looking past that, which granted is a pretty big thing to look past, how are the other aspects of the game's design? What about those gimmicks? Well, let's discuss those. And we'll start with what's probably the most interesting, the character stats. In the original, the monkey you chose didn't matter at all, at least as far as mechanics go. Sure, Gongon made life a bit harder for you when navigating thin wires, but that's really it. But now, each monkey has their own attributes. Depending on who you select, you'll get a different ball size, acceleration speed, turning speed, weight, initial speed, boost speed, relating to another gimmick we'll discuss soon, jump height and distance, and rebound, or how high you bounce after a fall. Ai is the basic pick and the character I'd initially play with. Or if you're more of a Mimi fan, she plays pretty similarly. Honestly, I could barely tell them apart. Baby is very light and very small, so if you like jumping high and want even more space on small platforms, he's your guy. Or monkey, I suppose. Gongon is an interesting pick because he can barely jump, has a slow initial speed, and is very big, meaning you'll have less room to maneuver. But he is also the only character in the game that can destroy bumpers just by touching them, and also has decent acceleration, which is good if you want to go fast, but not so good if you want to stop going fast. That weight will really work against you sometimes. It's not a playstyle for me, but if you like throwing your weight around and becoming an unstoppable force, he might just be for you. Yan Yan is like a more extreme version of Baby, having a similarly small ball size and an even crazier jump. In short, she's completely busted. Not even a little. As a casual player, you will immediately notice it, and in speedrunning, forget about it. And last of all, we have Doctor, who has good speed and basically nothing else. Like how Yan Yan is a more extreme version of Baby, Gongon is a more extreme version of Doctor, and I honestly don't really like playing as him at all. I mean, going fast is nice, I guess, but his jump is so bad and Gongon could at least destroy bumpers. But anyway, that's everyone. It's clear that Ai is supposed to be the good base character, with everyone else having their own strengths and weaknesses. So how is it in practice? I'll loop back to that. But first, let's look at some more gimmicks. Similar to SMB2, most of these stages have unique obstacles that make you think a little more on how you want to complete the level. And seeing how the gimmicks were a big part of what I thought made 2 better than 1, I'm all for it. So long as they're actually good, of course. Well, saving the obvious one for last, there's quite a few interesting ideas here. First up, we've got these dash pads. Or maybe they're called boost pads, since they're your boost stat effects. We technically saw them in Monkey Race before, but they're used pretty interestingly here. Obviously, they'll shoot you in a given direction, giving you a burst of speed at the cost of not being able to slow down or turn for a bit. These are actually used very well and even get turned on their head by World 8, where they may help or hinder you. There's this whole stage where you have to figure out which ones are good and which ones will just shoot you off into space. It's a simple but well executed idea. If anything, I think they could have been used a bit more. I could see you using the switches from SMB2 to rotate them and make a boost path to clear a gap or something. Or maybe each switch could turn a set of them on or off? Just a thought. Next up, we've got these tracks, and they actually make a return from Touch and Roll. But while they were barely used there, actually, they're not really used much here either. But in a way, I think they substitute for some of the thinner wires from SMB1. You gotta be careful not to lose control or you'll fly off and most likely fall out. Or sometimes they'll curve, forcing you to turn or speed up in response. If you're Baby, Gongon, or Yan Yan, you gotta be even more careful. These don't add to the game much, but they don't detract either. I like them. We've also got enemies now. You can't kill them, but they can be briefly knocked off the stage. Think of these guys as bumpers, only they're knocked back too. The key difference though is they'll usually move in a pattern where the bumpers are now stationary. Fair enough, I guess. And the last stage gimmick is these wheels. They only appear a few times in the game, but are actually an interesting concept. They're like a hamster wheel which you gotta roll from one side of a track to the other. Or alternatively, they'll move on their own and you gotta keep up. And one stage even puts bumpers in it, so that's pretty clever. I like these, though I do wish they got a bit more use, to be honest. There are other minor stage gimmicks like these small rotating walls and... wait a second. Guys, we got wind. It only appears for one stage, oddly enough, but you know where this gimmick is from? Sega Monkey Ball! Yeah, you thought we never hear from that game again? Well, it lives on in Banana Blitz, guys. No ice physics or on bananas, but hey, a win's a win. Anyway, before I get too sidetracked, let's talk about the jump, Banana Blitz's biggest gimmick. In short, it's completely and utterly broken. Or to clarify, it's the most overpowered tool in your kit. Because while the developers probably had a few fun ideas for it, I don't think they knew just how much these stages can be broken by a casual player, let alone a speedrunner. The main problem here is that you can easily use it to give yourself some extra speed or return yourself to an almost complete standstill. I think one of the most obvious examples is this level in World 9, Sinking Swamp, where there's a steep hill that you can completely skip or neutralize by simply jumping. Or maybe you want to avoid a slope somewhere? Well, no worries, because you can jump right over it. Want to skip an entire section of a stage? Well, there are more than a few times where that's entirely possible. So we've discussed some unintended cases, but what did the devs intend? Well, to be honest, not much. You'll mostly use it to defeat bosses. Yeah, we still gotta talk about those. Or simply use it to clear simple changes in elevation. In short, it's barely utilized at all for its intended purpose. The most interesting use I can think of is in World 10, Ultra Heaven, where in Stage 9 you need to jump off this rushing platform into the goal. And that's kind of an interesting idea. And there's a similar situation in 6.5 where you need to jump off a rail instead. There's also 6.9 where you need to build up enough speed to jump and clear a gap. So that's 3 memorable uses in the game. In short, I think the main problem is that the number of cases where you completely break a level far exceed the cases where you use them in the intended way. And even in those levels, it adds basically nothing. I think the worst examples are these stair segments in World 4. Like, come on, why am I doing this? This is what made the original so creative, because you couldn't jump. Meaning getting to the goal was as much about physics manipulation as it was navigating hazards. Like, imagine using the jump in Labyrinth or Postmodern. Actually, that's a bad example. Regardless, you can see the shift in stage design between 1 and Banana Blitz. Actually, in general, some of the stages are just not really that good. I've already mentioned the pyramid steps, but then they just have these random doors in places that you just gotta wait for. Or how about the stage where they half-heartedly try to push you to use a certain character? Not that you know to use them beforehand, so they just end up feeling like mild inconveniences. Oh, you're not playing as Gon? Guess you'll have to jump over these bumpers. I see you're not playing as Baby or Yan Yan, so no handful of bananas for you. You're gonna have to go around the pyramid, bucko. It's kind of a shame too, because honestly, I think the different characters having their own stats was a neat idea. But in the end, there's very little reason for you to not just play as Ai or Mimi or, let's face it, Yan Yan for the entirety of the game. I didn't even know you could switch characters mid-world for a good while. Maybe the first time you played a stage or world, they gave you a specific character, but afterwards you could play it with any of the 6? Or maybe just remove the character-specific stage bonuses entirely and let us focus purely on the different attributes. because the way they're implemented now feels kinda half-hearted, and really, half-hearted describes the majority of the stages here. Though, I will give the game points for this. Whether on purpose or accidental, there's a nod to both a touch and roll and adventure stage here, which I approve of. Does this count as giving it pity points? Whatever. Are you guys still with me? Let's talk about the last major addition in the game, the bosses. And while we're at it, we'll cover the story too. What little of it there is anyway. So the game begins with Ai and his friends looking at a golden banana bunch. But before they can do whatever they're gonna do with them, they're described as a treasure by the devs. Captain Nakalzma, a pirate monkey, steals them in his flying airship and laughs evilly. As you can probably tell, there is no dialogue in this game, and it's just enough story to get the game going. So, we're going for the new Super Mario Bros. Approach, I see. It may seem like I'm nitpicking this game while it's down for not having a deep story. I mean, it's a Monkey Ball game, not The Lord of the Rings. And if this was coming off the heels of Monkey Ball 1, I would agree with you. But discounting Adventure again, this was coming off of 2, which had 12 cutscenes, each with dialogue, all having more interesting scenarios than this. Not only did it describe why we went to the places we did, but they were funny too. They acted as a reward for clearing the world. Like, who could forget when Mimi turned down Bad Boon's marriage proposal, so he first tries to blow up an island, then when that fails, threatens to commit cannibalism. Was it sensical? No, but it made the game more enjoyable and more rewarding as a player. Now, we've downgraded to a cutscene with no dialogue that lasts less than 30 seconds. This, ladies and gentlemen, is your next-gen Monkey Ball experience. Not only that, but it is also the only main mode in your next-gen Monkey Ball experience. Who knows, maybe I'm being too strict, but come on, man. Anyway, on to the bosses, and they are certainly bosses. The first 3 are hardly worth mentioning, to be honest. Just hit the head, or the slowly moving missiles, or the belly button a few times, and down they go. The 4th boss is this robot dinosaur thing, and I'll be honest, this might be the best boss in the entire game since it acts like a stage. First you have to hit these moles, then deflect a bunch of missiles like with the 2nd boss, then you have to navigate its tilting body to get to the node on its head. I wish more bosses were like this. But I guess it's time to talk about the boss that everybody hates, the octopus. Talk about a difficulty spike. It mostly comes down to dodging, really. You have to weave and jump between enemies, obstacles, and waves of water to hit the back of its head. It really isn't too hard once you practice, but I don't think anybody was expecting to get destroyed this hard at first. Anyway, on to Bad Boon Crew. Jeez. Come on, Sega, really? Anyway, the boss is alright, though more funny than anything else. She's this really bad singer, and if you get directly within her line of voice, or within range of the speakers, you'll get an earful of her voice, and you'll literally go crazy for a few seconds. To silence her, just hit her microphone a few times while dodging the falling rocks her singing causes. World 7's boss is perfectly fine, with the timer being more of a challenge than anything else. But Captain Nakalzma himself? He's pretty unforgiving. He'll swing his giant claws at you, make the stage wavy, create energy balls. It's a really challenging fight worthy of a final boss. Oh, and of course his butt is his weak spot. Yeah, you don't knock off his cap to reveal his head or anything, you just resort to juvenile humor. Enough spankings and he'll go down and the last cutscene plays. Overall, the bosses aren't really abominable. If this was just a regular platformer, they would probably be serviceable. But this isn't a regular platformer, this is Monkey Ball, and I'm not really sure the bosses work in that context. The arenas are mostly just basic circles or squares, most of them are too easy, and with the exception of World 4, they all consist of just hitting the shiny thing, dodge, repeat. Especially in a game with no camera control, I feel like they could have done better. Don't take that to mean I think there's nothing good about the bosses though, because I think having them isn't an entirely bad idea. I just think they could have been better designed. But anyway, it's cutscene time. With all the golden bananas now collected, they turn into a steering wheel? Then II and company sail the banana boat they have now, I guess, back home, and the game ends. Again, with no dialogue, only childish giggles. I really do not like how they removed any depth or real humor in the story at all. Oh well, roll credits. Speaking of which, the credits minigame is very similar to 2, with you using the pointer controls to move the monkey around the screen, avoid the letters and bumpers, which don't detract from your score anymore, and collect as many bananas as possible. At the end, you're once again given your rating. Nothing original, but nothing too bad either. But we're not done yet. As I mentioned, there are 2 unlockable worlds after the main 8. How'd you get them? Well, if you complete a world without using a continue, you get a crown. And crowning all 8 worlds unlocks World 9, Sinking Swamp. I actually do like this system because it means that with enough patience, anyone can see the game through to the official end. But for those players who are willing to go the extra mile, they're rewarded too, while making the life counter actually mean something. These stages are really challenging, and there isn't even a boss, just another hard stage. Or at least a stage you see in SMB2's Expert. Crowning this world is an accomplishment in itself, but if you do, you get one more world, Ultra Heaven. Heaven, huh? Bold claim for Banana Blitz world. Call it what you like, either way it implies that all the characters died. Probably from 10.5, which might just be the most evil stage in Monkey Ball history. For reference, Bridge Master, Stamina Master, 10.5. You might even be able to swap those last 2. See these things? These are speed bumps, a little like the domes from SMB2's Advanced Extra. You see them as early as World 2, but here, they make up the entire stage. Imagine taking that one stretch from domes, breaking it up into sections, then having players jump between them. They do at least color code them so you know which bumps are more severe, and they even have the courtesy to line them up. But when you're making angled jumps and trying to beat the clock, they're no joke. So it's a hard stage, big deal, those are nothing new. Well, here's the thing. I'd go so far as to say this is the worst stage in the entire series so far. Worse than Chaos, worse than Switch Inferno, worse than Dodge Master. And the reason? This one platform right here. Looks innocent enough, gives a moment to rest before the home stretch. Wrong! It's a lie! I was playing this stage late at night, and after days of grinding, I made it to this area. Then, when I fell out, I wasn't sure what happened. I assumed I just wasn't paying attention, and there must have been a gap between that stretch of speed bumps and the platform. So 2 hours passed, and I finally made it back again. This time, I made sure to jump. It was only when I fell out again that I realized that this platform has no collision. Absolute nonsense. You made the hardest stage in the game, one of the hardest in the series in fact, then don't even check the collision? That's what I have to conclude because the alternative was they seriously added a fake platform to trick players, which is such blatant bad game design, it should win a medal. Sega, hire this man. More like, Sega, take this man out back and teach him a lesson he'll never forget. Verbally and in a non-abusive way, of course.
Hello?
They patched it in later versions.
Oh, so only North Americans got the bad version. Okay, I got it.
Yep. Whatever, my point still stands. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah. So, Worlds 9 and 10 are definitely pretty challenging, but arguably, I will say they're the best ones in the game. Space Case is up there too, to be honest. They all have interesting ideas with challenging designs and kinda add identity to the game. With the exception of that stage. I had a genuinely challenging experience that left me on a somewhat positive note. But what happens if you crown World 10? Yeah, I was insane enough to do it. And it's a good thing Yan Yan is so busted because I would have probably completely lost it otherwise. And the reward? A different message on the end screen. I don't know what else I expected, to be honest. Banana Blitz's main game is kind of a wreck. It had a few ideas that it threw at the wall, but none of them really stuck. The biggest of which being the motion controls. It definitely is a downgrade from 2 story-wise, and a downgrade from both 1 and 2 in stage design. That being said, I think this isn't a completely lost cause like Adventure. That game would need to be almost completely scrapped and rebuilt from the ground up. I can at least offer suggestions for Banana Blitz. Add a challenge mode first of all, replace the bosses with extra stages, throw them into 4 level sets with 10 exclusive extra levels, and we'd be happy. You've already got Worlds 9 and 10, maybe after fixing that stage, you can throw them in as extra stages, then just make 20 more for the easier difficulties. Because, as it is now, not only is the main game lacking in modes, but also in stage count. Monkey Ball 1 had 113 stages, Monkey Ball 2 had 150. Discounting bosses, Banana Blitz has 92. Counting bosses brings it up to an even 100. Again, that's kind of disappointing if you ask me. I mean, even the original arcade cabinet had 104. Touch and Roll, which I might remind you was on a handheld, had 120. Come on, guys. Am I really asking for too much here? Maybe it's a harder pill to swallow because of the stage design. Make sure to clean that up. Make the motion controls optional, and let us use a nunchuck or GameCube controller instead. Options are good. We've also got to switch back to the puzzle box design. I know even Deluxe struggled with this at times, but going back to basics would be great. No more jumping upstairs and waiting for doors to open. Heck, if you're worried about the game being too hard for motion control users, remix them to be harder in challenge mode and then make easier versions for the story. I know that take a lot of time to do, but still. Next, redesign the bosses. Make sure the stages play a bigger part in the fight. Like the bird? Maybe make a stage where he chases you and blows wind to try and make you fall off. And then every so often he can land and you give his head a bop. For goodness sake though, at least give us the courtesy of respecting our intelligence. There's a big shiny spot, we are naturally going to aim for it. We don't need an arrow pointing to its weak spot along with a video that shows us how it attacks. Last but not least, fully realize the character stats. Here's an idea, Yan Yan is the only one who can jump and it's on the same level as Gon Gon. It can't be too broken after all. Ai grabs bananas from farther away, Mimi has a slightly lower fall speed, Baby has a smaller ball, Gon Gon can destroy bumpers and is slightly magnetized to ledges, and Doctor is fastest. That way, as you play through a level set, certain levels may be slightly easier for different characters, allowing for some customization over how you like to play. Here's the thing though, despite what I've just said, you also have to balance that with good stage design, and having these stats opens the door to level design issues, something this game already struggles with. So as cool as the idea is of having certain characters having slight advantages over certain stages, I'd rather them drop it if it means we get better stages for it. These suggestions are, of course, made from someone with virtually no game design experience, but it does come from a passionate fan. I see a lot of people dislike this main mode, but I can genuinely see the good parts of it. Some of the stages are inventive. The character stats were cool, and I had a good time switching between them. The music and graphics are good. Very good even. Like I said, Adventure would take so much work it wouldn't even be recognizable by the end. Here, the changes would be major, but I think you could really turn this into a half-decent experience. Alright, so with that, we're done with the main game, which means it's time to move on to the party games. And with there being 50 games here, there's certainly no lack of Wait, 50? Fine, against my better judgment, let's go through every minigame with my quick opinions on each. Alien Attack. This one kinda reminds me of Monkey Shot, except you're controlling your character instead of being on rails. You've got a spaceship and you've got to survive hordes of oncoming aliens. Surviving for the full 5 minutes is kinda difficult, but get used to the controls and know when to retreat and you'll manage. If there were a boss battle instead of it being a score chaser minigame, I think this would be pretty good. As it stands now, it's a perfectly fine, inoffensive minigame. Asteroid Crash. Use the Wiimote like a light gun to defend against falling asteroids. If you survive 5 rounds, you win. There are also falling bananas that will give you HP if they touch your ship. This minigame is perfectly fine, but I don't feel the urge to return to it. Banana Catch. Sadly, this is not a recreation of the original game, and honestly, it would have been better if it was. You compete with 3 opponents to catch the most falling bananas, but if you get hit with a bomb, you're stunned and drop several onto the field. The problem with this game though is that the controls are not good at all. You're supposed to move your remote forward and backward to move about the 3D space, but it just doesn't respond reliably enough. This one is a dud. Banana Thief. See those bananas on the top? It's your job to guard them with what might be the worst solution possible. You've got a giant stick with a glove on it, and you must run along the bottom and hit the thieves off the platform. Occasionally empty balls roll along the bottom, and you've got to leap out of the way to avoid getting trapped and dragged off screen. This would already be kinda dull, but just to make it worse, the controls are not the best. Punching up with the Wiimote is way too unresponsive, and in general, it feels like there's a delay to everything you do. So yeah, another throwaway one. Bugs Balance. You're holding a stick and catching bugs. Okay, seriously? 5 minigames in and we're already stacking bugs? Yeah, that sinking feeling is really kicking in now. Anyway, you move your Wiimote back and forth and stack bugs. But don't let a spider land on it or it's game over. The pointer controls can be finicky, but honestly, I don't think it matters. Because who's booting up Monkey Ball to stack bugs anyway? Dangerous Route. Now this is more like it. This is a top-down take on the main game, and honestly, it's an interesting concept. This would have been right at home in Touch and Roll. That being said, it's not nearly as at home on the Wii. You aren't allowed to use the nunchuck here, only pointer controls. And as much as I hate to say it, they're just too imprecise. Since Monkey Ball requires quick changes in movement, snapping direction in moments, the Wiimote can't keep up and often has to be recentered. The course designs here, while very basic, do get extremely challenging at the end too. Honestly, for the pointer controls, too challenging in my opinion. It's the timer more than anything. You start off with a pretty strict time limit, and each banana you grab adds 5 seconds to the clock. Here's the catch though. Every time you fall out, you're brought back to the last checkpoint, which could be up to about a minute or so away. So good luck doing the final level, especially without getting a game over. Again, this minigame shows serious potential, but it just doesn't work with the control scheme. Too bad. Disc Golf. I'm mixed on this one. First of all, the controls are okay once you get used to them, but they aren't very intuitive. You'd think you'd change the direction you're aiming at with the D-pad, but nope, you've got to set it first with, you guessed it, pointer controls. Then swing your wrist to launch the disc. My main problem is that the goal is a bit too small, and instead of mini golf, I would have preferred regular golf like in Wii Sports Resort. Fish Catcher. It's better than regular fishing, I suppose. You dart out the Wiimote to catch a correctly colored fish. Rinse and repeat until time is over. Honestly, the pointer controls work fine here, but again, who is asking for this in a Monkey Ball game? Free Throw. It's a take on basketball, but because that doesn't involve pointer controls, you've got to select the hoop you want to throw in first. Occasionally one will flash, and if you get the ball in on time, you get an extra 20 points, but that's a rarity. Honestly, the throwing controls are the worst part. The game just doesn't know how hard you're trying to throw, so you'll either launch it full force to a nearby hoop, or vice versa. You can't even sabotage the other players that much. I mean, you can kinda do it if your ball bumps into another person's ball, but that again, rarely happens, and pretty much never on purpose. Honestly, I wouldn't mind a monkey hoops in the future, but this isn't it. Frog Ball. This reminds me of a Mario Party minigame, and believe me when I say, it's mini. There's only one map here, and the only thing you do here is flick the remote up to hop. If you're playing multiplayer, you're racing to get to the end, but in single player, it's just a straight shot to the finish. You can turn using pointer controls, assuming the remote hasn't desynced from all the flicking, but it doesn't make as much of a difference as I think the devs intended. I mean, there's a lake with lily pads that I think you're supposed to jump across, but there's no penalty for straight shooting it through other than the lowest quality water sound effect I've ever heard. Again, it'd be fun as a Mario Party minigame, but this isn't Mario Party, it's a Monkey Ball game with a minigame collection I'm seriously starting to question. Fruit basket. You tilt a leaf to bounce fruit into the correct basket. I guess the Wiimote works well, but again, why would I ever select this game? Yeah, all the old games were called minigames, but most of them were at least somewhat robust. Bouncing fruit is not a robust game concept. Hammer throw. Swing the remote like a lasso while holding A, then release it at the right time to send the hammer flying. You see, this game is very deep because you have to wait till the monkey's feet reach the very edge of the circle for best results. There's also the slightest bit of randomness as whether your hammer goes 60 feet or 100 is seemingly random, leading to an enthralling experience. Oh wait, no it isn't. It's half luck and is less than a minute long. You gotta love how they didn't even localize the measurement to feet, by the way. They did it in the main game, but I guess hammer throw was a bridge too far. High wire act. Subtly turn the Wiimote to avoid falling off a wire. If you're balanced, hold forward to move faster to avoid losing to the timer. That's all this minigame is, and it lasts about 2 minutes. Maybe it's designed to be played in a party environment, but if I pulled this minigame up at a party, everyone would probably interpret it as a cry for help. Home Run Derby. It's monkey baseball, but without the monkey and half the baseball. It really feels very generic, and I know for a fact I've played this exact game in both Wii Sports and Mario Party 8. But you know what? They localized the measurement system here, so I guess they put more effort into it than hammer throw at least. But you realize how far we've fallen. Monkey baseball wasn't the best minigame in 2, but it was fun for an occasional laugh. Now I'm praising it for using the Imperial system in the US version. Hovercraft battle. I feel like this game is purposely supposed to feel way too slippery, but instead of feeling frantic and fun like in Monkey Fight 2, it just feels frustrating. On top of that, the matches last about a minute too long, and there's only one map. I guess this is the best party game so far, but again, I'd basically play anything from 2 over it, so is that saying too much? Hovercraft race. There are 3 courses to choose from, which you would think would change the map in any interesting way, but nope. The only change is how many flags there are. Yeah, in case you couldn't tell, you now take your terribly controlling vehicle and touch every flag as fast as possible. Just another slightly below average game here. Hurdle race. This is an old-fashioned waggle game. Pump the remote and nunchuck to run and press B to jump over the hurdles. Honestly, this game is fun in an ironic way, so I guess I have to congratulate Hurdle Race for being the best Banana Blitz minigame so far. And you know what? I may even say this is better than Monkey Boat. Well, I'd have to think about that actually. Jigsaw puzzle. Okay, you guys aren't even trying anymore. A literal jigsaw puzzle? Seriously? First of all, what does that have to do with Monkey Ball? And second, why would I choose this out of any other game? Like, literally, any other game. Oh, because the picture moves. Yeah, sure. Anyway, you twist your remote to rotate the pieces, use pointer controls to snap them into place, and question your life decisions. Next. Jump rope. Flick the remote up to jump. Otherwise, I don't really know what I'm supposed to say here. It's just a jump rope game. Good job, guys. Keepy up. Use the pointer controls to keep the ball from falling off the screen. That's it. That's the game. Keep in mind, we're 20 in at this point, and there have not been any games besides maybe Dangerous Route that have held a candle to the originals. Monkey bowling. Alright, now we're getting into the classics. At least they thought to bring these back. Except, oh wait, this is the motion-controlled version. So of course the controls are unusable now. I can hold the remote and twist to the right, and it will say I curved it completely to the left. In other words, it's Wii Sports Bowling, but worse. I wish they realized that you don't need motion controls for everything. Nintendo realized that, and it made the games better for it. Monkey Boxer. It's Wii Sports Boxing, but worse. Yeah, I know I just made that comparison with bowling, but it's really the best comparison. It's a game that came out at the same time and pretty much had the same control scheme. Just mimic punching IRL to punch in the game, and lean to the side to strafe. Your punches don't feel like they have any impact, and it overall just feels clunky. The fact that this replaced Monkey Fight is probably the worst part about all this. Monkey Darts. It's about as good as you could expect from a dart simulator. For context, you jab your remote forward to throw the dart to score in one of 3 game modes: Count Up, 301, or 501. Basically, you either try to get the most points or try to reach exactly 301 or 501 points. In fact, I don't know why it's called Monkey Darts, because there's nothing special about it, unless you call being mediocre special. But no, that's just something all dart simulators suffer from. Monkey Fencing. Thrust a Wiimote forward to whittle down your opponent's health. You can also dodge and strafe forward and backward, but I found the latter hardly worked. For what it's worth, maybe this could be fun if it was actual swordplay like in Wii Sports Resort, but nope. I guess the base Wiimotes weren't accurate enough for that. So what are we left with? A very okay game, bordering on bad. Monkey Golf. Another adaptation of a classic. Except this might be one of the worst motion-controlled games I've ever played, hands down. First of all, you'll be sitting at the control screen trying to decrypt what exactly you're supposed to do, which is never a good sign. But then you finally figure it out. What I think you're supposed to do is use pointer controls to choose your direction, because of course you do. Then, while keeping the front of the remote facing the TV, swing it while holding A. Except, of course, it has a terrible time detecting your speed, and it doesn't automatically adjust your club. I know Monkey Ball 2 didn't have the best golf game, but I would play it 5 times rather than play this one. I'm not joking when I said these motion controls made me legitimately annoyed. What a downgrade. Monkey Race. So, I'm kinda shocked to say this, but this version is kinda good. You hold the Wiimote on its side, press 2 to accelerate, and tilt left and right to steer, naturally. Then use the D-pad to use items. It's very intuitive and easy to understand. Plus, the courses range from easy to about medium difficulty. Unfortunately, they aren't nearly as hard as before, but I'll take what I can get at this point. We finally have a minigame from Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz on par with one of the lower tier games in 2, and it only took, what, 26 minigames? Monkey Snowboard. It's a basic snowboarding game, but honestly, it's alright. And that's probably because they keep it so simple and don't throw in overly complicated motion controls. You simply tilt the remote left and right to steer, tilt forward to speed up, and tilt up to slow down. There aren't even any items besides bananas that give you a small burst in speed. So while this isn't anything crazy, it at least is better than the majority of the minigames so far. Monkey Squash. Has anyone heard of this sport before? I know I haven't, but it's actually one of the best minigames so far. Use the nunchuck to move and swing the remote to swing the racket. Yeah, you heard that right. We are now at Wii Sports level of usability here. Now, would I start up Banana Blitz to play some Monkey Squash with my friends? No. But if we were already playing Banana Blitz, then I might recommend this one. Monkey Target. This is one of the best minigames from 1 and 2, translated into Banana Blitz. So, you know what that means. It's gonna be worse in nearly every way, right? You glide using tilt controls, of course, and try to get not only yourself, but a second ball onto the target. There's no items, no wind, wheel of danger, actually, good riddance on that one, and there's only one map. Another thing is you're now shot out of a cannon instead of jumping off a ramp. So why would you play this version at all? Well, there is one mechanic that I do really like in this one. Your previous balls stay on the target. So not only do you have to make a good landing, but you also have to think about whether you'll risk pushing a ball that's already on there. The game is fixed to 3 rounds this time, which is a bit of a shame, but overall, this is a very mixed bag for me. If the game had the old mechanics and more maps, this would definitely be one of the best versions so far. As it is now, I'm going to say something potentially very unpopular. I might prefer this to SMB1's Target game. Target 2, not a chance, but I don't despise it like I think a lot of people do. Monkey Wars, probably the best minigame on DS, this interpretation is okay in single player. You move with the nunchuck and aim and look around with the pointer controls. I know they probably did the best they could, but the controls just feel slow. The shots don't really feel like they have much of an impact either. The maps leave something to be desired, and items are much rarer in this game. Getting some friends to join can lead to a decent time, of course, but then you have much less screen real estate to look around. So in the end, it's functional, but much worse than the DS. I honestly am mostly bummed that I didn't love this one. Monkey Smith. It's a stupid game with controls that don't work. So the concept is that you're swinging hammers to forge different objects. Simply follow the arrows on screen and swing your remote in the appropriate direction. Now, that idea sounds stupid to begin with, but on top of that, the controls don't even work half of the time! I can swing my remote right, and it'll tell me I swung left. I can swing down, and it'll say I swung right. I can swing left, and it won't register movement at all, and time out. So tell me, why would anyone ever play this game? And I thought we were finally getting into the okay games, too. Number Ball. There's numbered balls floating around a screen, and you gotta point at them in the correct order. You can either do it counting up or in a random order determined by the game. The pointer controls work fine, but again, why would anyone play this? It's literally just counting. I remember playing Brain Age and it had something similar, but this is Monkey Ball. I don't want to gather my friends around a TV to count floating balls. Paper Sumo Fighter. You use the pointer controls to tap the ground and move little paper cutouts around. Okay, you know what? That's it. Of course we knew that with 50 minigames, a bunch of them would be bad. But did anyone think we'd resort to stacking ladybugs, counting balls, playing Paper Sumo Fighters? If this is what the developers considered fun, then I feel bad for their upbringing. This game is stupid and dumb, and I could go the rest of my life without even thinking of this minigame again, and I'd be perfectly fine. Paraglider. The control screen is the best part about this one. You're trying to navigate a paraglider in one of 3 modes, but none of them work. Target seems like the most basic, but even then you are playing with by far the least functional control scheme I've ever seen. You'd think pressing Z would turn you left, B would turn you right, and both would make you lean forward, but no! They just had to make you use motion controls too. Except not only is the nunchuck's motion sensor complete garbage in normal circumstances, but even the Wiimote doesn't respond here. That is, until it's least convenient and you go careening off in the wrong direction. So tell me, if I can barely after 1,000,000 attempts land on the target just once, how am I supposed to succeed in getting to the target within a time limit or while going through checkpoints? Well, the answer is you don't. It's just another throwaway game that doesn't work at all, and the whole game would be better off if it never existed. Racing Birds. The controls are fine, they're responsive and all, but that's the best thing I can say here. It's clear that this was supposed to be a multiplayer game first, but even then, it's just boring. You fly down a single hallway that looks like it came straight from a Nintendo 64, avoid obstacles, and fly through rings. Great gameplay, am I right, guys? This is a perfect example of one of those games that's so middle of the road that it just ends up being forgettable and boring. Just a waste of time. Red light, green light. You thought I wasn't being harsh when I said the game wasn't even trying anymore? Well, how about pumping the Wiimote and nunchuck, because this was a game that clearly needed people to buy an accessory, while playing a game you probably haven't played since you were like 10. Yeah, when I and my friends get together, that's what we want to play. Ring Toss. This is like Monkey Hoops, but it's single player and you flick the remote sideways instead of up. There's also a streak bonus you can build up, so don't worry, they put in effort, guys, I promise. The controls are marginally more responsive than Hoops at least, and maybe this would be okay with friends if you're really, really bored. Rock, paper, scissors, attack. You thought we were done with the playground games? Nah, we've got another staple here too. Except they somehow managed to make it worse. Now, how'd you mess up rock, paper, scissors, you may ask? Well, if you win, you have to pick up the hammer and give the opponent a bonk on the head. If you lose though, you can pick up a helmet and block the hammer, so long as you're fast enough. So it's a game based on instinct, where what you do is based on random chance. Oh, and the timing for the helmet is super strict. The animation of you picking it up has to finish completely or else the hammer hits you anyway. This game can't be healthy. It looks like the monkeys are giving each other brain damage. I know I'm receiving a fair amount of it myself. Scoop the Goldfish. I've never scooped goldfish IRL, but it can't be more frustrating than it is here. You move the net similarly to how you move in banana catch, but you also gotta move it up and down to scoop it in the water. The more fish you catch, the worse your score. Just kidding, you need to get the most. But you wanna know what's a real joke? Your net will break, so you gotta replace it. It's so great when you finally catch a fish and then the net just breaks. This game doesn't make me mad like some of the other games, but I do not want to play this game again. Seesaw Ball. Finally, another good one. Move the monkey down the obstacle course by tilting the Wiimote to tilt the seesaws. Your score is based on how fast you get to the goal, where on the goal you land, and how many bananas you pick up along the way. Is it anywhere near how fun the originals minigames were? Well, again, it's probably better than Monkey Boat, so good job, Seesaw Ball. You aren't complete garbage. Shepherd. Man, remember when we were playing good games like billiards? Now we're sheep herding. Pointer controls work well enough, though they did desync from time to time for me. But yeah, you control a monkey controlling a dog and lead sheep to a barn. Do that for a few rounds and you win. My main question at this point is why? Who was looking at SMB2's minigame list and thought, you know what this game needs? Sheep herding. I hope that person is in a better mental place now. They're probably the same person who chose games like Red Light, Green Light, and Rock, Paper, Scissors. Watch as the next game is Simon Says. Simon Says, you thought I was joking! Nope, nothing is too low for this game. Again, the motion controls work fine with you raising and lowering the nunchuck and Wiimote for each flag, but it seems a bit too sensitive, like the scheme is gonna betray me. But who am I kidding? It's Simon Says with pretty much no bells or whistles. Slingshot. It's Slingshot with pointer controls. There are some balloons and UFOs to hit, but this is another one of those Mario Party type minigames where objectively they're fine, but just way too short and certainly not what you play Monkey Ball for. Space Monkey Attack. This is again kinda like Monkey Shot, but this time combined with Space Invaders. Just shoot as many enemies as you can, don't let them hit you, then take on the boss. Controls are simple with you twisting the remote to move and shaking to dodge, and I can see this being fleshed out into a proper minigame, just add more stages really. So there you go, another decent minigame. Good job guys, we're still not even up to 1's quality yet, but I guess at this point, I'll take what I can get. Spaceship Landing. Why does this game exist? Seriously, you just land the spaceship once, using as little fuel and bouncing as few times as possible, then the game just ends. Like, I have to say this again, the controls work fine, but there's no obstacles, no extra rounds, there's just nothing to this one. It's pointless, and I don't know why they even bothered making it. Treasure Submarine. You're controlling a submarine with tilt controls and hunting for treasure. It's a very slow-paced game, having you use your radar to find hidden chests while you collect gems and coins on the side. It is certainly a game that exists. I don't know, what do you want me to say? The relaxing and methodical nature of this game really gives you time to contemplate your own existence and what you're doing with it. Trombone. Trombone! Ladies and gentlemen, we have officially reached the bottom of the barrel. This game is sorta fun, I'll admit, but only in a completely ironic sense. Like, you're sitting there in front of your TV, sliding your Wiimote back and forth while pretending to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on a trombone. And you know what? I'm so good at this game, you all don't stand a chance. The funny thing is there are 3 songs to play, but they're all super slow and have the melodic complexity of the alphabet song. I don't even mind music minigames, they're pretty fun a lot of the time. But you only have one instrument, the music is all royalty free, so you don't even get to jam to some music from across the series or anything cool like that. And even when you play it correctly, it just sounds pathetic. UFO Capture. Just use the banana catch control scheme to move your UFO around and use the A button to capture aliens. You can tell they knew this minigame was good because they put all the aliens in a very small arena and gave them very few ways to fight back. A few will jump and stun you for a couple seconds, but that's about it. Plus, it ends after only a few rounds. So after you've beaten it once, why would you play it again? Any improvements to your high score would be pretty minimal, and really, nobody's gonna be impressed when you brag about your high score in Banana Blitz's UFO capture minigame. Whack-a-mole. You know, this minigame is certainly pathetic, but not just in the way that you might expect. First, it uses banana catch controls, which I do not like at all. There's a reason we have control sticks, guys. Secondly, there's hardly any complexity. And I know what you're thinking, what complexity can you add to Whack-A-Mole? Well, how about false positives for one? Maybe score multipliers? They have moles that give out more points, but that's it. So with the worst controls and no interesting mechanics, this game is less interesting to play than Whack-A-Monkey from I's Funhouse. Just think about that for a sec. This next-gen Monkey Ball minigame struggles to compete with a smartphone game from 3 years earlier. That's what I call pathetic. Yacht sailing. Here we go, guys, the final minigame, and it's slightly below par. You twist the remote and press A to choose which direction to wave the yacht, then shake the Wiimote up and down. There are cramped spaces that are harder to navigate, or there's open water full of whirlpools and sharks, so pick your poison. Just try to navigate this single course as fast as possible, and that's it. What a way to end this collection. Well, we made it through. What a miserable experience that was. By the way, did you know that some of those minigame instructions you just kinda had to figure out for yourself? Several of the control schemes are awkwardly worded, and there are even a couple of times where I had to look at the manual, which might be the first game I played where that's the case. In fact, you want to know the one thing I like about the instruction screen? The pseudo-realistic Eye. Even he looks bored. Well, there's just one more aspect to talk about. Multiplayer. As you'd expect, you can play a good majority of the minigames with 1 to 4 players, though some are only up to 2. Though with that being said, you may not keep contact with those people for long. Then there's the main game, which has a unique kind of multiplayer called Nothing. That's right, we've gone from having 2 competitive modes to 1, and now 0. For a Wii launch title based on multiplayer, that's a really odd oversight. I guess they thought everyone would play the minigames because playing with friends is a completely different process now. Depending on how they rank, each player gets a set amount of points each round, and the one with the least amount of points chooses the next minigame. Sort of like a tournament mode. You can even customize the amount of rounds you play. Still though, that doesn't make up for the fact that basically half the potential multiplayer content is missing now. On that note, that's it for Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. Here's the thing, I like to stay positive when talking about games, especially if they're typically viewed in a negative light, because at the end of the day, games are supposed to be fun. That being said, there are some games that are just beyond redemption. So, is this game one of them? Well, the minigames are, that's for sure. Never in my life have I seen such a pure concentration of filth stain the quality of a game. Like I said, many of them felt like Mario Party minigames, only with inaccurate motion controls. Here's the thing though, the Monkey Ball minigames were always much more robust, featuring multiple maps and sometimes completely different modes. There may have only been 6 to 12 of them, but they had depth and could be played over and over. When adventure has more replay value in its minigames, you know something's not right, to put it mildly. It would be easy to say that it's a simple case of quantity over quality, but honestly, I think the issue runs much deeper than that. Leading up to the game's release, one of the key selling points was that it would utilize every aspect of the Wii remote. But where I think they faltered was when it came to coming up with actual uses for the controls. Many of them are pretty similar, and almost none of them are fun or intuitive. And even when it comes to the most basic uses, like bowling, boxing, or golf, they just feel like vastly inferior versions of games from Wii Sports, or even Monkey Ball 2. Golf especially getting under my skin. There's a bit of fun to be had at multiplayer, but I assure you it's not because of the game. It's because of the laughs you'll have at its expense. One of my best moments with this game is playing 2-player disc golf, laughing at how atrocious the controls were, where our final results were 82 to 71 on a 9-hole game. How's that for intuitive controls? So in the end, if you're gonna have some fun with friends on the Wii, play Mario Kart, Brawl, or even Mario Party 8, which had more minigames than Banana Blitz, almost all of which were more fun. Or let's just say you want to restrict yourself to launch titles. Just play Wii Sports. On paper, it may have less content, but it has loads of more fun. As for single player, I don't think it needs to be said, but as someone who has played all 50 minigames at least twice, none of them are worth picking up this game for. In fact, playing so many low-quality games back-to-back actually dampened my mood. This isn't supposed to be some shovelware game, this is supposed to be Monkey Ball! And yet, it only takes 4 games for us to reach bug stacking. And honestly, the worst crime of the minigames is that they make you forget that the main game was, okay, not good, but not as bad as many would make you believe. After all, you will at least have some amount of fun with any Monkey Ball game, but fleshed out the ideas are not, and I would have loved to see more than 100 generously counted levels. It really needed more time in the oven, time which the minigames took away from it. Think about that. This is a Monkey Ball game where the main game was the side mode and the minigames were the main focus. A Sega rep straight up admitted they spent more time on them, and in Japan, the game wasn't called Banana Blitz. Its title roughly translates to Exciting Party Set. So what led to this new change in direction? Many would say it's because AV was dissolved and Sega was at the helm. But actually, remember that AV wasn't completely out of the picture. Sure, they technically dissolved, but they still lived on with the new Entertainment R&D department, which was the team that made this game. In fact, many people who worked on the originals also worked on this one. So was it higher-ups simply choosing Monkey Ball to be the franchise for a party game package? Or was it the team, maybe even Nagoshi himself, wanting to try something new? We'll never know, I guess, but regardless, that was a rocky start of Monkey Ball's revision era. And with sales higher than they'd ever been, over 3 million in fact, the question wasn't so much whether fans would see another game, but what they would take away from this one. Well, at least fans didn't have to wait long to find out. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.